Thank you. Hi everyone, thank you all for coming. Good evening, it's really great to see so many of you here. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Georgie, I'm the founder of Pepped, and we're an email and SMS marketing agency. We specialise in working with direct-to-consumer brands. With me here this evening, we've got Tom, who's the co-founder of BARK. BARK are a brilliant performance marketing agency. We've also got Jake, who's the CMO at Piglet and BARK. Piglet and BARK are a direct-to-consumer bedding and sleepwear brand. And we've got Erez, who's the new business lead at BARK, and Erez is going to be leading a panel discussion shortly. So I also want to say a huge thank you to Klaviyo for having us here this evening. Fantastic offices, so I'm sure you'll all agree it's really great to be able to make use of the space. And that kind of leads me on to the question of why are we here? So with a potentially rocky few months ahead, with a cost of living crisis and the recession coming up, we know that direct-to-consumer marketing is likely to get a little bit more tricky. A lot has changed since the last recession back in 2008. Tom and I were saying that just the other day that performance marketing actually didn't even exist back then, and lifecycle marketing has certainly come on a really long way. So we're very much in uncharted waters when it comes to knowing how to successfully navigate this kind of environment. And so the good news here is that with that uncertainty comes plenty of opportunity, and that's what we're here to discuss this evening. So here's what we've got coming up. Shortly, I'm going to hand over to Tom, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about the acquisition side of things. I'm going to be speaking a bit more about customer retention and what we're focusing on over the next few months. And then we've got Jake, who's going to talk from a sort of brand perspective before we open up to questions and a bit of a panel discussion. So, before I dive in, there are three scenarios that we believe will play out amongst direct-to-consumer brands over the next few months across the UK and beyond. Some brands are going to lose out, they're going to get onto that red line. Some will ultimately sort of peak and trough, but stay the same and be on that orange line. And there are a few brands that will thrive and will get onto that green line and do really well over the next few months. So the question is, how can we ensure that as many of you here this evening are able to get on and stay on that green line? You're going to need a really effective customer acquisition and retention strategy in place. So I'm going to hand over to Tom now, who's going to speak to you a little bit more about the acquisition side. Go.
Thank you, Georgie. Really great to see so many of you here today. I think when we actually first spoke about this event, we were like, yeah, maybe like 30, 40 sign-ups would be cool, and then maybe half of them will come. And we've actually got a full room, which is like really great to see. So thanks a lot for coming. So I'm going to talk to you about the state of play with paid acquisition. It's been a pretty crazy 12 months, I'd say, for a lot of people in terms of like Meta and Google advertising. It's really what I'm focusing in on. And I kind of want to kick off by just asking, like, how many of you, like, just show of hands, have found the last 12 months pretty tough? Like, go on, give me a vibe. If you don't run paid ads, you don't have to take part, but we'll get a vibe. Okay, Toby's found it horrific. Okay, great. Okay, cool. So some people have found it hard, and there are reasons why things have like changed a lot. There's obviously been a pandemic, but I think there's kind of stuff behind the scenes that have been significant changes in the last like year or so. So I'm kind of viewing these four things on the line as like a trickle-down effect after the rollout of iOS 14.5, which is basically Apple changing the way data is passed back to advertising platforms, particularly Meta. And so this led to a decline in measurement in platforms. So basically it's harder to know how many people are going on to buy after seeing your ads. That's the key thing that happened. And there's actually been kind of responses from both Google and Meta in terms of like product changes that are going to help us as advertisers continue to get good results from their platforms. And the first one of those is Performance Max. So that's an evolution of shopping campaigns, smart shopping, and then Performance Max, which is a campaign that basically uses all of their placements, proper black box kind of thing, to show your ads in the best place and get you the best results. Advantage Plus is essentially the same thing from Meta, where you put in the country you want to target, tell it how much you want to spend, give it some creative, and it kind of does the rest for you. So there's been a lot of change, and kind of understanding how you can adapt to that is kind of my goal with this presentation. Cool. So, not to sound too ominous, but this is only the beginning. There's going to be like way more changes when it comes to measurement, particularly deprecation of cookies by Google Chrome next year after. They've delayed it. They've delayed it every year for the last 3 years. It's going to get rocky, but that's a whole other presentation, so I'm not going to talk about that right now. So, what I'm going to start with is a sketch I put together of what I think performance marketing is going to look like in the coming years, and it looks something like this. And this is a black box. And we don't really know what happens in the black box, but what we do know is we put stuff in and stuff comes out, and ultimately those are results. So what can we do to influence what goes on inside our black box? I think there are three key variables that we really need to think about when we're talking about advertising on digital platforms going forward. And the first one of those is high quality data. I was actually chatting to Jan, where is he? I can't see him. He's a guy who helps people implement tracking properly. Pretty useful to chat to. I'll probably have a little word. But basically, high quality data signals of people who are going to buy from your business is your main asset as in your marketing team. None of your competitors have access to the same data set as you, and ultimately your data will do the targeting for you by allowing both Facebook and Google to build a really comprehensive profile of someone who's likely to buy from your brand. So data is like the foundation stone and the cornerstone of your marketing going forward, so making sure that's all set up correctly is critical. And then the next input you've got into the black box is creative. So if you're not iterating on creative and knowing how you're going to be upping your click-through rates, engaging the right audiences who are going to go on to buy your product, you're basically missing a trick. It's one of the two key inputs. So I can't recommend highly enough really investing in creative going forward. And then finally, you're going to tell how much you want to spend. And how do you know how much you want to spend? You basically have a firm grasp of the unit economics. How do I make my business profitable? What do I need to acquire a customer for? And what are they likely to spend with me across their lifetime? Those are things you need to be thinking about, and ultimately balancing all these different metrics to make sure profit comes out the other end, which are your results. I'll probably should put dollar signs, that might be more fun. But, and then you optimize based on the results. You don't know what happens in the box, but you do know what you put in and you do know what you get out, and if it's not good enough, you probably need to change something. That's basically the process. Cool. So now we're going to talk a little bit what are the actions now then? So that's all good fun. So I'm going to give you some cheeky tips for growth in 2023, trying to avoid the word recession and all that sort of stuff, but ultimately how can you optimize what you're doing to get the best results you can going into Q4 in 2023. So these are the three things I'm going to cover. So kicking off, investing in creative is something that a lot of brands are starting to do more of, and we're seeing with our partners it's increasingly becoming more and more important in terms of achieving the results you want, particularly on Meta, but also going forward more on Google too, with the advent of Performance Max and more sort of placements across YouTube as well. And so that kind of leads on. So what is good creative? It's all very well getting a graphic designer and spewing out a load of stills, but what does good creative actually look like? And Holly, who's sat here, has actually come in and really helped us work out as a business and with our partners what does good creative really look like. And this is kind of it. So basically what we see really working is, the key thing is focusing on the right hand side of this at the moment, is we all know if we got an elevator with someone, we could sell our product. We know why it's good, we know what the key USPs are, and we can probably give someone a cheeky discount to get them over the line to actually try the product. But what the real thing you want to work on is how do you stop the thumb? How do you actually capture the attention to be able to give them the pitch? That's basically what you want to be prioritizing testing for. Some people might respond really well to, I hate grocery shopping, or tired of coming home to an empty fridge, or maybe it's, I'm slightly hungover, I'm going to get that tub of ice cream. Whatever it might be, you want to be testing to try and work out what key visuals, what key messages are going to give you the best results in terms of how many people are going to actually stop and give a shit about your brand. That really is how blunt it is. The number of people that just scroll past your ads in about 0.2 of a second is quite a few, 99% of people probably. So that's how we think about creative. And our rule of thumb really is to aim for a minimum of 20 new ads a month. I think that as a rule of thumb, people spending a decent amount on social in particular, that's really the benchmark you want to be aiming for. If not 30, 40, if you've got the capacity, but it kind of depends on the ratio between how many conversions you're getting and how much you're spending, all that sort of stuff, but really aim to be testing a lot of variations. This isn't 20 new things on the right, this is more 20 new things on the left and maybe a couple of variations, if that makes sense. So that's how we think about creative. A few pro tips. See Toby's got his notepad out for these, very exciting. So creative needs to be integrated into your performance marketing team. This is not just hiring a designer who can knock out some nice images for you. Strategy is critical. So really focusing on the strategy, like who are you trying to appeal to, what are your customer personas, what are they going to respond to, and then using the data you get back from the platforms to test your ideas on these hooks. Like we know our ad can sell someone, but how are we going to capture their attention, what they're interested in, what's the most effective for particular demographics, and expand your reach by appealing to different people. And roughly 1 in 10 ads is the winner. That's why we recommend 20. You kind of want 2 winners a month, that'd be quite nice. If you've got a good strategy in place, it's a nice place to start. So, invest in creative. Moving on to knowing your numbers. So what I mean by knowing your numbers is ultimately having a forecast of what you can spend. That really is an invaluable thing. I've been spoiled for the last 5-6 years by having a guy called Alex Eisenhart, who's now our head of data analytics, but I worked with him when I was at Simba, and he predicts with pretty ridiculous accuracy how much revenue you're going to make on any given day, usually Black Fridays. He won 300 quid in a sweepstake at Simba by being within like 5k of our Black Friday actual revenue. So it's a very useful thing because it allows, like in my opinion, because it allows you to essentially benchmark what you're likely to actually make if you spend a certain amount of money and give a certain discount at a certain time of year. And I thought I'd show you this chart. It's a 3-dimensional chart. Don't ask me how it works. I find it very, very scary. And I think someone much smarter than me explained to me how it works. It's simply revenue as a result of total spend, discounting, and time of year. It's like, okay, I'm sure there's someone in here you might understand, maybe Jan, who did data science. But basically, what it spits out is a ROAS curve for different times of year. So if I spend this amount when I'm not on sale, maybe in July, I get this ROAS. But if I'm on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and I'm given 50% off, I can actually spend a shitload more. So it's like, this is then your benchmark for expected performance for Black Friday this year. And you can build the model off different periods and all that sort of thing. You need a smart person to do that for you, don't get me wrong. But ultimately, you have an idea of what you're shooting for and what you want to improve on going forward. And actually, that's makes managing expectations internally, setting your own growth goals, understanding how much stock you need, all that trickle-down effect really sort of slots into place, and you can then all align on a clear goal and objective of, okay, how much might we need to improve performance to get the same results at a higher scale. So really useful stuff. And then finally, optimizing your website. So most DTC businesses just do not invest in their website anywhere near enough. Conversion rate is your other lever beyond creative that's like uniquely your like advantage over your competition. And like it really is like baffling how few people really try and develop their website consistently. And it's usually a case of running loads and loads of tests. Most of them don't work, you get disheartened, and then you crack on with something else. Maybe you'll just try and change the audience or something. But it really, conversion rate is what will make your whole business continue to grow. If CPMs rise, you can counteract that with a better conversion rate. I mean, there's only a limit on how many people are going to buy, but you can always eke out an extra 10-20% and constantly develop that. So conversion rate is key. And my pro tips, I'm by no means a conversion rate expert. I've just kind of seen a lot of different businesses not invest enough in it. But I think like the key pro tips I want to leave you with here, speed this is something that was really brought to my attention when I was at Simba. It is the biggest factor in whether someone converts or not. If you think about the times you've been on some kind of website, maybe you're browsing for some new shoes or something, and it's all laggy and you really can't be asked when you're going back and it's not loading, taking you somewhere else. You want your website just to load like that, really snappy. And this is like Google's research has basically suggested that for every second longer your site takes to convert, you miss out on takes to load, you miss out on 20% of conversions. And if you put this on a chart, it diminishes pretty fast. So the difference between 1 second and 3 second load is 40% conversions. So really like make sure you don't have any big laggy heavy images on there as an obvious like thing. Really try and like work with your developers to make sure your site loads as fast as possible. Yeah, big pro tip there. And then ultimately, you know your customer better than anyone else. I've seen a lot of people work with CRO agencies and stuff, but ultimately they'll end up going through the same learning process that you've already gone through. So in my opinion, the best CRO is always done in-house. You can get under the bonnet. There's no time pressure in the same way as when you're paying an agency a big fee to do CRO and that sort of stuff. Ultimately, you can go in, you can change the images, you can change the copy how you want. You don't need to get everyone's permission. It's a much smoother, faster process, and you know exactly what else is going on with the extra context. So absolutely do CRO in-house if you can. If you don't have anyone dedicated to it, that's fine. like a few hours a week to set up an A/B test on Google Optimize, which is a free tool, is very much worth it. And my final pro tip is just ask your mum to check out on mobile. I did this with my mum with a couple of brands once, and it was like, it literally amazed me how much she struggled. She added like multiple to cart, she couldn't remove them. She was like, what the hell is it anyway? Like, it was a bit of a mess, but I think like when you're so in the weeds and you know why your product's good and what the key USPs are and all that sort of stuff, it's so easy to lose sight of the fact that if you go to show your homepage to someone for 5 seconds and then take it away, they probably won't know what the hell your product is. So go and chat to your mum. And that is me, kind of. So in summary, invest more in creative, know your numbers better, and optimize your website. Cool.
Okay, so thanks, Tom. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking you through our customer retention method, which is the framework that we're using on a weekly basis with our clients. So before I do go into that, actually, I want to talk to you a little bit about the problems that we're facing. So why is retention a bit of a sticking point? Well, when it comes to retention, there are 3 key problems. This is the first one, and it's that uncertainty and a constantly changing environment is putting added pressure and time on budget-stretched businesses. So knowing where to focus your efforts can be a bit of a challenge. The second problem, as we see it, is that customer retention isn't always quite as exciting as customer acquisition, and so it often gets a little bit less attention. In fact, I'm sure if I was to ask some of you here whether you focus more of your time on acquisition versus retention, I would imagine some of you would say acquisition. And so, we get it. You've all got a million one things to do, and often customer retention just slightly falls off the bandwagon. The third problem is, due to a dizzying array of information out there, really knowing how to drive up your customer retention rates can feel like a bit of a dark art. So what's the solution? Well, there are 3 key principles that we use when following, trying to increase the brand's customer retention, and we think that these are going to be particularly poignant over the next few months. So I'm going to walk you through these in a little bit more detail now. So first principle here is to use personalization and provide your audience with a hyper-personalized customer experience. There are 80% of consumers that are likely to make a purchase from a brand that provides a personalized experience. 6 in 10 are more likely to become repeat buyers following a personalized shopping experience, and 67% of customers agree that that their standard of a good experience is higher than ever. Yet, so many brands still struggle to deliver that element of personalization. Yes, you can still be successful without personalization, but you can be even more successful with it. In order to build credibility with your consumers, your marketing can't just be the most engaging or the smartest. A lot of messages out there are already ticking a lot of those boxes. So what your marketing needs to be above all other adjectives is relevant. Nowadays, consumers are getting much more smart about marketing tactics, and that's largely attributable to the pandemic, which pushed more of everyday life online. Post-2020, consumers are expecting their digital experiences to mimic everyday life. They don't want faceless interactions or to feel like they're talking to a robot. They want to feel special, like that they matter and that they're more than just their credit card number. So the buying process is getting more and more personalised on every major platform, and customers now have this expectation everywhere they shop. So in short, lots and lots of brands are focusing on personalisation, and so really we want everyone in this room to be as well. So the question here is, how can you ensure that your comms are as personalised as possible? Well, we believe that data is by far the most important criteria when it comes to personalisation. Clean, reliable data on customer information and behaviours, both real-time and historic, that's integrated across platforms. The other key cornerstone of personalisation is relevance. I'm sure you'll all agree that inboxes are hugely cluttered, with the average person receiving about 120 emails per day. And a lot of those are often addressing you by your first name. So that's why just using first name for personalisation is really no longer enough. To take it further, you really need to offer relevant comms in order to grab, and relevant content, I should say, in order to grab your audience's attention. So we recommend personalising by providing recommendations based on previous purchases, their behaviour, sending at times they usually shop, and unique messaging based on acquisition source, for example. And the final hallmark of personalisation here is ensuring that your comms are timely. Gathering enough data on your subscribers means that you can start to understand at which point they need that content, and then you can send that content to suit the times that they're usually online and they're usually shopping. And that brings us on to our second key principle, which is to implement a watertight customer journey across the entire e-commerce funnel. So I've got a question for you. How many of you here, stick your hand up, have an iPhone, a MacBook, any kind of Apple products? Probably most of you. Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. So I read the other day that Apple were one of the first companies to send their customers home with fully charged devices. Before that, customers had to go home and charge up their iPhone or whatever they bought, and so they had to delay their gratification. So what Apple did here was create a really standout experience of quite an overlooked part of the customer journey, and in doing so, this is some of the way that they went to creating really loyal brand advocates. So the takeaway here is really to focus on ensuring your whole customer journey is as good as it can be, and in order to deliver a much more memorable customer experience and ultimately more repeat purchases. The customer lifecycle is the journey that someone goes through to find your brand, decide whether to make a purchase, and ultimately become a repeat customer. But the process takes time, especially at higher price point items. People want to know that they can trust your brand to deliver value for their money. So it's your responsibility to educate your customers about the value you provide, and then translate that value into a message that's appropriate to them based on where they are in the customer journey. So, a little bit more on this. So you need to engage your customers across all 5 stages of that customer journey in order to create a really standout customer experience and guide people to continually buy from you. Gaining access to an email or a phone number requires 2 key ingredients: trust and value. So we recommend capturing this sort of data via carefully placed pop-ups, embed forms, quizzes work really well, competitions, that sort of thing. Most people are quite slow buyers. The average buying cycle can be sort of between 60 to 120 days. So although your acquisition efforts can result in a direct purchase, often more likely they're going to want to find out more about your brand before they're ready to buy. So the good news here is that it's a really good chance to send them a great welcome series, and we'd really recommend you hone in on this now and make sure it's as tight as possible and is working really well to encourage those people to make that first purchase. Speaking of first purchases, once someone's made their purchase online, they've obviously got to wait, and no one likes waiting. So the trick here is to make sure you've got a super slick post-purchase journey in place that's segmented based on whether it's someone's first or second time shopping with you, that you're giving them all the information they need about how to get in touch with customer service, what to expect. All that information needs to go into your post-purchase journey. So really recommend refining what you've got in place now and tightening it up. And our last key principle here is to build long-term brand loyalty by focusing on growing really strong customer relationships. So after the customer has gone through that post-purchase journey with you, the customer life cycle isn't over. This is now your chance to nurture that relationship, continue to add value in order to increase customers' chance of turning from a one-time buyer into a multiple purchaser. And one way to increase customer loyalty is by surprise and delight. So surprising and delighting your audience is a really great tactic here. One example is to send personalised anniversary or birthday comms, for example. Tell me how many of you are already doing this? Who's sending birthday related emails? Okay, a few of you, great. So they're obviously highly relevant, highly personal. They're a great way to boost engagement, and they perform exceptionally well. So think about where in your customer journey you can add these layers of value in order to really entice your audience to come back and shop from you again and again. Another key strategy is to gather feedback and understand how your customers really feel about you. You might think you know how your customers feel about you, but gathering feedback is going to tell you, the real answer. So use data to refine your approach, and you can then move towards what people do want and away from what they don't need. So recommending this via feedback surveys, qualitative focus groups, and net promoter score surveys to really try and gather this kind of data. And finally, reward programs. So according to recent figures, 49% of customers say they've spent more with a brand after joining a loyalty program. And if you're stuck for ideas for your loyalty program, then Wild Nutrition are a really great example of a good one to have a look at. They reward customers for a variety of on-site activities, like leaving a review, but actually they go one step further, and customers can claim rewards that are aligned to their personal beliefs. So, for example, when you reach 1,000 points with Wild Nutrition, you can choose to plant 5 trees in Rwanda or donate to Plastic Oceans UK. 70% of millennials, we read the other day, consider company values when making a purchase, so you're much more likely to make the most of these conscious consumers if you think about these sorts of rewards. And that's our 3 principles. So in summary, highly recommend providing your audience with a hyper-personalised customer experience and looking back over your journey now to make sure that you have got those elements of personalisation. Implement a watertight customer journey, review it, making sure that it's watertight across that entire e-commerce funnel, and build long-term brand loyalty by focusing on growing stronger customer relationships. So that's a whistle-stop tour. If you'd like more information on any of the bits we've been through, or to chat to us in more detail, come grab me at the end. Also, we've got lots of the Pepped team here, and you'll find in your tote bags there's a little leaflet on a bit more information about how we might be able to support. So I'm going to hand over to Jake now. He's going to talk a bit more from a CMO perspective. There we go.
Of missing my train, I'll be running back to Leeds. So I thought, this is the bit we did the rehearsal for, isn't it? So you can click. It's a lapel. There we go. Is that on? Can you hear it? So I thought I'd put a picture of a race car up there. No more funnels, well I think I might have one in the next slide. When I joined Piglet, I was the first marketing hire. So I thought, how is the business currently growing? I mean, I don't know. I presume it's mostly retail side here, whether you're a big incumbent or startup, and think like, what is the vehicle, like how are we growing and what's going to be the next step change for us? I can't take credit for this illustration, but I thought it was interesting to see what are the component parts of a car and how does that drive. So everything from its engine, to the fuel you put in it, to the lubricants, I don't like that word, but you get what I mean. And obviously the turbo boost that might, take over that next quarter, like what are the sales goals you need to achieve. So we kind of overlay this into business terms. I thought, right, growth engines. And I think really you only need to be good, or really good at one of these. I don't think you need to necessarily be best in class at all 3. So if you break it down into sort of layman's terms, you've got performance marketing, virality, and content. I think it's horses for courses, but any business, if it's not working on meta for you, then probably got rubbish creative or conversion is just not right. Like, don't blame iOS, I would say. I mean, it depends if you're either DTC or maybe you sell printers or something. Maybe you want to become an autonomy on content marketing. So I think it's choosing which channel you might, once you found product market fit, then deciding like what is the channel market fit. For us at Piglet, like we lean heavily into performance marketing, which inherently drives word of mouth, referrals. We've got quite a conversational product. Again, depends. I was speaking to someone earlier, how do you get UGC? We just get it. People like taking pictures of the bedroom and the pyjamas, so we're quite fortunate in that respect. I think, as Tom was saying, the CRO piece, you can do loads of this and do really well and chuck loads of money in it, but the compounding gains are going to be pretty stunted if you're not looking at the site speed, the CRO part of things. Turbo boost, as I said, we got a post from, I think it was Zoella. She got loads of followers apparently. She posted about us last month, got a huge spike in traffic, and that was it. I mean, it's that one-off peak, then day-on-day traffic looks awful. So these things are not really self-sustaining. I'm not saying they're not good. Same with PR, blasts. These are all things that help, I guess, build incremental gains, but I don't think it's something that is that time up? So it's really figuring out like which one of these are going to become that sort of self-sustaining growth loop with these incremental added on top. obviously the fuel, like the capital required to run the ads, the users, the content. Does anyone, just out of interest, I've not seen this much, would anyone say this is their primary growth engine here, content? Anyone? Is it, yeah?
In a minute, yeah.
What's the business?
Hippie toe, we sell supplements, but the main reason being is because we're blocked from Facebook at the minute.
Okay, so you have no choice. It's just an interesting, I think like this one would probably take a lot more expended effort, whereas like your quick wins are here, but I think the main takeaway is that I don't think you need to necessarily be brilliant at all three, but if you can hone in on one and do it really well, you should be good to go. Got one more slide. I put a loop in, a growth loop rather than a funnel, because I feel like funnels, you know, they're a bit linear and people just fall out, so it's like, we actually want to get people coming back in. But to try and bucket it really, and what I try and do at Piglet is really think about what are the high leverage tasks that I can be doing. Think about like how are we reaching people, how are we speaking to people, bucket that into paid and earned, so obviously the content marketing or performance ads marketing piece. What are we doing when people actually get to site, as Georgie said? Lead capture, like 2 years ago, decided to like really hone in on getting people's emails. Like now, 2 years on, really thankful I made that decision. Rented then becomes obviously the owned audience, which I think is key. Coming up to Black Friday, we've got a really strong list that we can lean into. And obviously the retention and revenue piece. Don't regurgitate everything you've just said, but how will you bring them back? And these are kind of the three things that I think, especially in Piglet's case and for most businesses, which really helps drive this. Like, how are you going to create a remarkable customer experience? And for us, like everything from unboxing, which helps drive the UGC, helps drive word of mouth, like that for us is key. And we've never scaled at the detriment of like poor Trustpilot reviews. Like we know when that starts getting crap, we're doing something wrong, so you need to scale back or sort of shit out on the actual product experience. I think a lot of people overlook that. And then the other two parts, I mean the lifetime value. If you have an amazing experience, you got a high propensity to tell people what this brand is great, the unboxing was great, the product's great. Inherently, they're probably going to be more likely to come back. But then the referral bit should take care in its own right. We do have a referral program. How incremental it is, I'm not too sure, but I think if you've got an amazing product, like that bit will take care of itself. And that's me.
Amazing. All right. Firstly, thank you very much, the three of you. We're going to move to the panel discussion section now. So, I guess we'll go to questions from all of you. I'm sure we have many in a second. But a burning one that a lot of people are asking me, and that I know people want, is kind of, it's now October 18th. We're now in Q4 currently. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas are coming up. So, from your perspective, given where we are now in the year, what would you recommend in terms of things that people can actually go away with and action when they go back to work tomorrow and they're working on it? What do you reckon? So have a think. Should we open up? Tom?
I mean, I'm really thinking like site speed would be probably what I'd look at. You've got 3 weeks to speak to your dev and be like, how much can I speed up my website? And also like improve conversion rate as a priority. And maybe make a few other small tweaks. That's really what I've been looking, especially with a few weeks out. You don't really have time to iterate through 20 plus ads by then. You should have probably been doing that the last few months. So I'd be really focusing on like website changes you can do, sort of really maximise conversion rate throughout the period.
From our perspective, I'd say segmentation is probably the key now. So split it, if you haven't already, splitting up your database, understanding who are your most important customers, who are spending the most frequently, and honing in on those people. Equally, tidying up your database, cleaning it, making sure that you've kind of got rid of a lot of the dead wood, people that are unengaged, but just focusing on that segmentation, and then you can tweak your messaging accordingly. But having clearly identified buckets is going to be key.
Probably going to try and prospect as much traffic to the site now, not spend as much on retargeting, and when retargeting polls are big on Black Friday. And then probably think about who we're going to email on Black Friday. I've been told there's probably more competent CRM people in this room than me that need to start introducing to the people who are unengaged now, like start delivering their messages, so like make sure deliverability is good on Black Friday, like make sure your active cohort is definitely going to get your email, otherwise like you need that data to be big. So yeah, making sure you start introducing them into emails now rather than for the first time on launch day.
Because we've only got how many weeks now to Black Friday? It's not that
Not long, yeah.
Depends when you start.
Yeah.
Depends when you start.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, next week was.
Given what you've learned today, it will be tomorrow. But does anyone have any burning questions for the panel? Yes, please.
There's two about site speed really. So one bit of free value, if you haven't got a big dev team, check out this extension called Google Lighthouse. It'll show you how fast your website's going and remedies as well. And then the second thing is about plugins and technologies to increase speed. So is there any you'd recommend? Because I know there's one called AMP for mobile, which speeds up the checkout on mobile. Is there anything else you'd recommend for us to look into to increase site speed?
I've got one that we did, like look at the size of your images, like we had some big ass images on our site, like look at compressing them, like considerably improve site speed for us.
Yeah, I mean in terms of specific tools, I can't really help you at this point, but one thing I would look at is AMP for Google Organic Search Results. It can really help. When people are coming back, it basically preloads the page for you. So I would really look at that. We implemented that at Simba and it really, really helped like organic conversion rate for sure. Yeah, for return traffic.
I've got a couple of questions on creative on Facebook, and just on site speed. We just run there's a company called Audit who do a report. It's like a 2-week report, and they just like bring down your image size like rapidly, and it's like 2 weeks. And then also looking at apps that you have in Shopify. Like I've just done that a trip, and we had like 40 apps. It's like we don't use like 35 of them, so we got rid of those, and that massively helped us. But yeah, on to creative. Two sides. One on like budget. I think it's like 20 creative is a lot. I think if you're spending a small amount of money, so it's like where do you look on like a percentage of budget when it comes to creative? So that's one thing. And then the second one is, seems like there's a big push at the moment, or Facebook have been a big push to us recently around whitelisting influencer content and using it within your prospecting. Do you have any like insight on how that's done recently?
Nice. So let's start with sort of investment in creative. I think brands should be looking to spend like maybe a couple of percent of spend, a few percent of spend on it when you get to decent scale. So you want to be spending, I mean, it's kind of how long is a piece of string, to be honest, but it kind of depends on your situation. You don't obviously overspend, but you need to basically make sure you've got enough of a pipeline of content that you don't just basically run out in your creative fatigue. So this isn't about doing like a 15 grand shoot every month to basically produce the ads you need. It's about doing one 15 grand shoot for the year or 6 months that can then give you enough sort of evergreen content. So that's kind of the way I think about it. And if you can spend a few £1,000s less on your budget and improve your overall click-through rate and maintain conversion rate by 10-20%, which isn't unrealistic, if you haven't done much creative testing, then it's an investment that pays for itself 10 times over in no time at all. So that's kind of the way I think about it. And if you can spend a few £1,000s less on your budget and improve your overall click-through rate and maintain conversion rate by 10-20%, which isn't unrealistic, if you haven't done much creative testing, then it's an investment that pays for itself 10 times over in no time at all. So, but, I mean, if it's sort of like with the Tony's example, it's like Millie McIntosh like promoting the fact that her kids use Tony boxes, which is like a story box for kids, and she does like a really intimate video promoting it. That can work extremely well. So I think it's trying to make sure it's appropriate for the brand, and you'll probably get pretty good results.
And just on that content, do you use it organically, or do you link her account in BARK and then put paid spend behind it within like prospecting or within retargeting?
Yeah, you link it to the account under the branded content thing, and yeah, it does well. let's say. Yeah.
Saw some hands at the back earlier. Please.
For a small business with CRO, where it's only kind of like 6 to 10 sales a day, what's the best way of going about that? Because often we find that there's not enough data and there's a lot of anomalies going on, Google Optimize, and yeah, quite difficult to navigate exactly what changes we should be making.
Yeah.
Well, I'll probably, you say 6 to 10 sales, 6
Yeah.
to 10 a day. I think probably won't touch it at that point in terms of like investing in a tool. So I just think you're not going to see, like, you're not going to get conclusive data. Like, it'll take ages for a test to mature and be like statistically significant. So I think, although it's not going to be a true like A/B test, I think it is, as Tom said, doing the mum test, like getting more people to test it on mobile, tablet. Like we had a site redesign last year. Thought it was all great. Like no one checked it on tablet. It was pretty much like upside down for a month. Like it's crazy how often people don't check the site, even though we're all like pushing traffic to it. And there's just little things. So yeah, I would say at that volume you're at now, I think it'd be tough to see like meaningful gains, like doing proper CRO at that point.
I think that the point is it's a common sense thing. So it's like, should do the 5-second test where you go around, maybe people in this room, like they're all marketers, like show them your homepage for 5 seconds, take it away, what do we do, why would you buy, are you interested? It's like a great place to start, and then start making like significant changes. Change how you talk about yourself. Are you actually hitting on what people are like? Are you actually making people want to buy, and are they actually understanding what you're offering? Often the best CRO is actually removing elements as opposed to adding them in. That's a real like classic mistake people make, because they add more and more and more, and you end up with loads of different calls to action and trying to say too much on the product page. But actually, they just want to know realistically what it does and how much it costs, and maybe how long it will take to get to me, and do other people like it. If you boil it down, so I'd probably start making big changes to the site if you're not getting the results that you want, and to see like does revenue go up and down. You can always put it back. Like that's the main thing. But yeah, a bit of common sense and a bit of input from people, which is always great. And speaking to customers, like speak to people like why they're interested. Mind reviews, understand why people are buying from you. And I'd probably start by integrating that into the copy, and maybe updating your images so you can see it. Build the process, and then as that improves, you might find one thing just improves your conversion rate significantly. You start getting 20 conversions a day. Okay, now we can start scaling things up.
Great. There was a question that was sent in that I really want to ask, and Georgie, I hope you can help with this one. Is kind of where would you go about starting, going back to work tomorrow, on turning any new and planning for new customers that are going to come in over kind of the November, December, potentially peak period, depending on the business? How would you prepare and plan for turning those new customers into long-term valuable customers?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think for me, what we would do is focus on that customer journey and going through it with quite a fine-tooth comb and looking at, testing it, looking at where there are gaps in the journey, where people might fall through, where can you add a little bit more value to make sure that people are feeling kind of engaged and nurtured, and you've got that element of personalization in there, particularly with your welcome series, so the series that someone might receive before they're ready to make a purchase, but they're interested in the brand. So looking at that in a lot of detail, and equally once someone has made that purchase, going through and looking what happens after that, what happens over the next few weeks and months, how can we continually engage them, provide them with lots of relevant content, explain, using UGC, using content to really hone in on the brand and the values and why they should continue being a repeat customer. I think given it's already in Q4, I think that's where I'd focus my attention, is just going through your customer journey a couple more times and just looking at where there are gaps and where people might be currently falling through the cracks, and then looking to kind of rectify that and make sure that you've got a watertight journey as possible, and that you've got comms in there to kind of suit different people's needs from an engagement and kind of personalisation perspective.
Brilliant, nice one. Any more hands? I think I saw one at the back before. Does anyone have any questions? Because I've got loads, so if you have questions. Okay, I have another one actually for you, for Jahik and Georgie as well, is on what part would you say SMS and texts have in that process? Because I think a lot of time we talk about email and how that happens and the email flows and things, but what part does the text SMS play in this? Do you think about them differently for different audiences or anything like that?
So we do SMS for the UK and US.
Okay.
There's massive headroom. If you're in the US, like definitely consider it. Like the conversion, the AOV is really good for us. UK we treat it differently. So it's quite an invasive channel. We're not sending like on-demand text where you click, or if we tried it and churned, it just like goes through the roof. So I think it's got a good part to play. Like we're still figuring out how not to make it. You know what I mean? Like asking for an email, then asking for a text, and then like the customer journey just gets bombarded. Like really want like one unified pop-up, give them an option like can we take your email or number, like give them the choice. I think for SMS like the US like it's much more mature channel, like they're used to it. Whereas I think in the UK, I don't know about you guys, like everyone uses WhatsApp, everyone's SMS inbox is like just a junkyard of verification codes. So like the conversion is just not as good. I think like it will mature over time, but if you're in the United States, I would like seriously consider it. UK, I don't think it's quite there yet, personally. Unless anyone else disagrees. Everyone else thinks UK SMS stuff.
100% open rate, which helps.
True.
Thoughts on SMS?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I echo exactly what you said, Jake. I think US, go for it. I think UK, we're slightly more reserved and still early on in that SMS curve. And it's still good to integrate it into your strategy and use or pepper SMS in with email, but potentially used it a little bit more sparingly, particularly for kind of transactional emails. Consent is a huge thing here in the UK. The US are a little bit more lax on some of the rules, but so you need to be hot on that and make sure that people are opting in, and that if you're sending marketing type SMSs that you've got the right consent. So it's a little bit more of a minefield, but definitely worth considering. But I think I agree with Jake that it's a little bit more advanced in the US at the moment.
I think there's only one brand that I can think of that's ever texted me in the last couple of years. Not since uni, but does anyone here use SMS just out of interest?
We use it. And it's really effective.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's in the States. Well, we actually can't use it in the States because we sell CD products, and so CD can't be text in the States. However, in the UK, it works really well for us. Okay. We use it with email hand in hand. Our biggest issue is that we can't sync our text data. I mean, me and Georgie are going to chat about this tomorrow in a meeting. However, we've struggled with syncing our SMS data with our Klaviyo data, and so actually to be able to do proper incrementality test of understanding like how incremental the value of sending SMSs, our data isn't synced. It's just not synced, and therefore we can't do proper A/B tests with email and SMS, unfortunately.
Okay, great. Pull him up a chair.
Yeah. Did you get first dibs on the food?
Yeah, I've already eaten my food.
Okay, great. Anyone else have any questions for our panel? Please.
Can I go to the toilet, please? No. Tom's twitching now, he's wondering what I'm going to say. So Tom, you know my fetish for reviews. So just thinking about, there's two things, there's a kind of question here for Jake as well. So one of the things that I think sometimes overlooked is you generate content, like you touched on it earlier on. We've got this huge wealth of content out there that we can get our hands on if we want to. Thinking about that, is it worth pursuing that to supplement that creative piece you're talking about? And Jake, thinking about your brand, I do some work for Desmond and Dempsey, and they drove in some amazing content they constantly use in ads and also on their site. Do you think your customer creates the best type of content for your customer? So be candid, mind. Like if it's crap, say it's crap. You know what I mean? Like if it's not worth pursuing, don't pursue it.
Just to clarify, so you're saying, is it worth hunting down UGC?
Yeah, is it worth having a strategy specifically for that? Is it worth putting the effort in to get that content, and can you use it to supplement stuff that maybe your team or another creative would do for your brand with some guidelines?
It's like yes, but you kind of have to be wary because most people aren't very good at taking pictures. sounds silly to say, but most stuff does end up looking a bit crap. So I think one thing that we tend to find works better is actually looking at, okay, how can we find some really good customers we can get in touch with, and then maybe we can help them like put together a script maybe of how they maybe want to shoot some stuff, or give them some examples of what a good photo looks like that we're after. And so you can then base that on maybe some ads that are already working for you, or stuff you want to try, and ideas. So rather than just getting like 10,000 people to send you in their favourite photos of their bed linen on their unmade bed or whatever, it would be kind of like giving it a bit more guidance would be where you want to put the effort in, and maybe cherry pick a few of them. Rather than just say running a competition, for example.
I would say I think there's like two strands to it. I think the type of content, type of UGC that you'd reshare on like your Instagram gallery, that needs to be looked like, founder needs to like that, she approves. Whereas there's maybe some photography that we wouldn't put on Instagram, but it'd be great on a product page. It looks a bit more real. Like you think we can shop on any, like I think if it becomes too like cinematic and too looks like, it becomes inauthentic. So I don't mind on product pages having it look a bit more like the photo doesn't need to be pristine. So I think you can like bucket the photographs in two different ways, if that makes sense. We're not doing a good enough job of it yet, I have to say, but I think product pages, like the reviews, and then the actual photos of that product you're looking at, like if it's all very aesthetically pleasing, like it looks too good to be true, right? So it needs to look a bit more real, I think.
So kind of, you still need to curate what comes on the site anyway, right?
Because we're like Tom said, we do get some stuff like you wouldn't want to put out there, so there's like an element of vetting still, I would say.
There was some funny stories about showing going on.
Great. Anybody else? Any more questions before we go?
I guess just to build on that, we're a luxury brand, and I think what I struggle with is the UGC, that we can't use it. It's just not good enough. And I think not only that, it's jewellery, right? So everyone wears like other jewellery in the picture, which just doesn't work. And everyone keeps on telling us it needs to be more real, blah blah blah. So what is the strategy?
Well, have you tried it in-house? Like, can you just say to your founder, let us just try it or not? Because
I am the founder.
Because often times where I've tried stuff in-house and my founder says that is not good, and like, let's see what the data says. Like, we can't have a subjective view of one person. Like, let's test it out
for
there.
Sure. I'm all up for it. I think the problem is it's like someone's ear. Do you know what I mean? It's just, would Chanel do that? No. I'm not saying we're there, but it's just like, I think the struggle I find is, what's that balance? Is it unboxing? Maybe that's the one, or...
I mean, just shoot your own. Just shoot your own UGC.
Yeah.
Like, you know what you want. Like, you founded the business. I mean, it's literally just pick up your phone
just
and
make it feel.
just make it feel like UGC, but do it properly. Because that's basically what we find is like, most people just can't provide good photos of products. It's harder than it looks, believe it or not. This guy filming us has a job for a reason, so do what you think looks good.
Have you seen anyone do it well that you've worked with?
I mean, Holly does it pretty well, to be fair. I mean, it's a bit of a I mean, she works for BARK, so it's a bit of a plug there, but ultimately, like...
But brand side,
See,
like any brand side.
Yeah, Astrid and me. Astrid and me?
Yeah.
I've seen them.
Scout around. I mean, Tony's we were looking at for UGC. They've managed to get kids like recommending their product basically, and it's all staged obviously, but it feels very authentic. I mean, even if it's just full vertical shot on an iPhone, like that will feel like UGC, and you can then overlay like more native kind of fonts and that sort of thing if you want to annotate your videos. So it literally can be basically a shoot, but it's more just how you actually present it. Like it's just got to be authentic and feel. Because ultimately the stuff you're showing to people is competing with friends and family and stuff people actually care about, so it's kind of got to slot in and feel natural when you're going for this kind of UGC stuff.
Yeah, it's just a shame because people wear it but can't repost it, so it's like, that's just like not a strategy, so
Yeah.
Brilliant. It's a great question.
I saw Tala, the light bulb people, ran a competition for the UGC, which I wish I was good enough to enter. But it really made me think about how can I take a good picture of a light bulb.
We're trying it now. I used to work with Tala and I actually ran that competition. We got NAFL. And the stuff that we got was and we had to pick. Yeah, you should have won if you'd entered, honestly. And obviously, because we'd announced that we were going to give a winner, we had to choose somebody, and unfortunately, it was like the best of the bad bunch. So I don't think competition is the right way to go. I've since moved on from Tala, so I can talk a little bit. I now work at Catkin, which is it's like the button-up box of cats, if anyone understands that. Cats are notoriously difficult to work with because they're flinging themselves all over the place. But we have like an ambassador program, so these aren't people that have hundreds of thousands of followers. These are people that we've identified on our tagged photo on Instagram that take a good photo of a cat, and it's very organic, and they have maybe 200, 300 followers, but they take a good picture and they consistently take a good picture. So we've reached out to them and say, hey, here's some new product, here's something else. Just send us whatever pictures you can take. We'll repost them and give you your next box free. So I think it's building up rapport with people that you know can take good pictures and they don't have a huge following. And you can trust them.
Yeah, very fine. I mean, shameless plug, but probably do go have a chat with Holly, because we do film a lot of VGC style quotation marks content, but definitely worth a chat. Great. Any other questions before we wrap it? We're basically at the end. So if you do have questions, I mean, the panelists are we're going to hang around for a little bit, and there are people here from.
I'm going to be running up to it.
Jake won't be on the way out. You might be able to vent his ear. But if you want to connect with Jake afterwards, feel free. Otherwise, we're hanging around. Pepped and BARK people are here to have a chat. The food and drink, please do take it, because I don't want to take it home. None of us want to take it home. So please go for it. The room's yours. And yeah, I guess a round of applause for the three panelists.
Yeah.
Housekeeping, if you could drop on your way out when you do leave. You don't have to leave anytime soon, but please drop your lanyard in the lanyard box. Yeah, yes. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Great audience.